Welcome to Night Whispers for Sleep, where dark, unsettling stories help you slowly doze off. If you enjoy these stories, please like and subscribe. It starts quietly, so quietly that no one notices. No sound of alarm, no sharp turn in the night, no moment that announces itself as the beginning of an ending. On the evening of September 10, 2001, New York City moved the way it always did, restless and crowded and unaware of what waited just beyond sleep. Cars idled at red lights. Subway doors slid open and closed. People spilled onto sidewalks carrying groceries, briefcases, paper bags, their minds already drifting toward home. Sneha and Philip was one of them. 29 years old. A physician. Recently married. Living in Lower Manhattan, close enough to the World Trade Center that it was part of the everyday skyline rather than a symbol. She had worked hard to become a doctor, surviving years of pressure, expectation, and exhaustion that most people never see. She was known among friends as intelligent and stylish, confident but restless, someone who didn't always settle easily into the roles life offered her. Her marriage was new. Her career felt uncertain. Her life was full of the quiet tension that comes from standing between who you were and who you hoped you'd become. That Monday was not marked by fear or intuition or dread. It was just a day easing into evening. After work, Sneha went shopping at Century 21, the department store near the World Trade Center that drew crowds looking for good deals and distraction. The store was bright and busy, racks packed tightly together, shoppers weaving past one another without apology. She browsed. She chose. She paid. Credit card records would later confirm what she bought, but at the time it meant nothing at all. Lingerie. Shoes. A few household items. Normal purchases. The kind that suggest plans, routines, and a future that hasn't been interrupted yet. She carried the bags with her when she left, plastic handles cutting lightly into her fingers as she stepped back out into the city. Outside, the air was warm, the streets loud, the sidewalks crowded with people who would never remember her face. Somewhere between the store and home, she blended completely into the rhythm of Manhattan nights. Later that evening, surveillance cameras inside her apartment building captured her arrival. Grainy footage. Muted colors. A single angle that wasn't meant to document history, only entrances. Sneha appears calm. Unhurried. Dressed like someone finishing an ordinary night. She walks through the lobby carrying her shopping bags, her posture relaxed, her movements unremarkable. There is no hesitation. No pause. No sign that she senses anything waiting for her beyond the frame. She disappears down the hallway, heading toward the elevators or the stairs, swallowed by a space the camera cannot see. That is where the record stops. This moment, unnoticed at the time, becomes the last confirmed sighting of Sneha Philip alive. No one knew it then. No one rewound the tape. No one froze the frame and studied her expression for hidden meaning. Her husband would return home later that night to an empty apartment and assume at first that plans had shifted or time had slipped away. In New York, independence was normal. People came and went. Absence did not immediately feel dangerous. The apartment showed no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken objects that demanded explanation. Her keys were not dramatically left behind. Nothing screamed emergency. But the shopping bags were never found. They vanished along with her, as if the night had quietly absorbed them. Hours passed. Then more hours. Time moved forward without marking the exact moment she should have been home. No one could say when she disappeared, only that at some point she was no longer where she was expected to be. Outside, the city settled into sleep. Lights went dark in apartment windows. Traffic thinned to a low, distant hum. September 10th ended the way it always had, gently, without ceremony, without warning. Sneha was not yet a missing person. Not yet a case. Not yet a name that would be searched and debated and questioned for decades. She was just a woman who went shopping after work and walked into her own building. The ordinariness of the night is what lingers. No argument. No farewell. No dramatic last phone call to replay. Only a door opening to let her in and nothing after. Later, that silence would grow heavy with meaning. Later, people would search this night for clues it never offered. But in that moment, nothing felt final. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing suggested the story should end there. Sneha had plans, belongings, a life still unfolding in small, everyday steps. She had every reason to believe tomorrow would come. If this was just another ordinary night, quiet and unfinished, why does it end here? The apartment is quiet when Sneha's husband returns home later that night. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel wrong at first, only unfinished. Lights are off. Shoes are still by the door. Nothing immediately signals that something has gone missing. In New York, late nights are normal. Schedules overlap. People move independently through the same spaces without always intersecting. At first, her absence doesn't feel alarming. It feels temporary, like she stepped out again, like plans changed, like time simply slipped sideways. He waits. Minutes pass. Then longer stretches of waiting that don't announce themselves as important until later. Sneha does not come home. Her phone is silent. There are no messages explaining where she went or when she might return. Morning approaches slowly, without urgency, without understanding that it is about to become something else entirely. Inside the apartment, everything remains exactly where it should be. Furniture untouched. No drawers pulled open. No bags packed or clothing missing in a way that suggests intention. There is no note. No sign of preparation. No hint that this absence was planned or rehearsed. Sneha's keys are gone. So is her identification. The shopping bags she carried into the building the night before are missing too. Not left behind. Not partially unpacked. Simply gone. Their absence raises questions that don't yet have language. If she left, she took what she needed. If she planned to return, she didn't expect to be gone long. The apartment offers no answers. Only stillness. When concern finally hardens into fear, the timeline begins to close in on itself. Investigators will later retrace her last confirmed movements with precision that feels almost cruel. Credit card records place her at Century 21. Security footage shows her entering her apartment building. That much is clear. What follows is not. CCTV cameras inside the building never capture her leaving. Not through the front door. Not through a side exit. Not through any angle the cameras can see. The footage runs forward into nothingness, recording hours of emptiness where her image should appear again but never does. It is as if she steps out of recorded time the moment she enters her own building. Investigators search for additional footage from surrounding streets. Nearby businesses. Traffic cameras. Anything that might show her movements later that night or early the next morning. Much of it is missing. Some cameras weren't working. Others overwrote their tapes. Some footage is never recovered at all. The city's memory is incomplete, full of blind spots and erased moments. Each missing camera feels like a door closing. Each blank stretch of time grows heavier with possibility. Friends and family are interviewed. They describe a woman under stress but not despair. Sneha had faced difficulties at work. Conflicts with supervisors. Uncertainty about her professional future. But none of it suggested collapse. Her marriage had tension, as many new marriages do. Arguments that didn't feel unusual. Adjustments still being made. No one recalls threats. No one recalls fear. No one remembers her saying goodbye in any way that sounded like goodbye. She was complicated. She could be impulsive. She could be private. But she was also present, engaged, living inside her life rather than trying to escape it. Every person who knew her offers a detail that almost fits. Almost explains something. But never fully does. Investigators return again and again to the same fixed points. She entered the building. She never exited on camera. Her belongings disappeared with her. There is no sign of violence. There is no sign of planning. There is no clear direction to follow. Time becomes the problem. The enemy, Hours pass between her last sighting and the moment concern becomes official. Those hours stretch endlessly, filled with unknown movements, unknown decisions, unknown encounters. They cannot be reconstructed. They cannot be replayed. They exist only as absence. Each unanswered hour multiplies the possibilities while confirming none of them. Did she meet someone inside the building? Did she leave through an unmonitored exit? Did something happen in a space no camera could see? Every question depends on a moment that no one can prove ever existed. The investigation circles itself, returns to the same facts, stalls against the same missing footage. Time does not reveal its secrets. It only moves forward, carrying the mystery with it. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. Still, there is no verified sighting of Sneha after she enters her building that night. No receipt, no phone call, no witness who can place her anywhere else. The story does not advance. It simply stops. And that stopping point becomes the most unsettling detail of all. There is no documented moment where Sneha Philip leaves. The morning does not arrive gently. It arrives screaming. Before the sun fully clears the buildings, Lower Manhattan is already awake, already moving, already unaware that it is standing on the edge of erasure. September 11, 2001 begins like any other Tuesday, clear skies, mild air, the kind of morning people later describe as impossibly beautiful. Commuters pour into subway stations. Coffee carts open. Office lights flicker on floor by floor. Nothing yet suggests rupture. Nothing yet signals that time is about to fracture. Somewhere in the city, Sneha Philip is already missing, though no one knows it yet. Her absence exists quietly, contained within an apartment, contained within a marriage, contained within a timeline that has not yet collapsed. Then the first plane hits. Sound ripples outward, sharp and unfamiliar, echoing through streets that were built to amplify noise but not confusion. People look up. People stop walking. People pause mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-step. Smoke pours from the North Tower, black and unreal against the blue sky. Phones begin to ring. Radios crackle. News spreads faster than understanding can follow. In the minutes that follow, Lower Manhattan becomes something else entirely. Sirens scream from every direction. Traffic freezes. Crowds form and dissolve and reform again, driven by rumor and instinct rather than information. The second plane hits. Any remaining illusion of accident collapses instantly. Fear becomes visible, contagious, electric. People run. People freeze. People search for exits that keep moving farther away. Streets fill with ash before anyone knows what ash will mean. Inside this chaos, the absence of one woman becomes almost impossible to define. Sneha Philip is reported missing after the attacks begin. Not before. Not in the quiet hours when timelines can be measured and reconstructed. But after the city is already burning, already screaming, already breaking apart. The report lands into a system overwhelmed beyond recognition. Emergency lines are flooded. Police stations are consumed with evacuation and survival. Hospitals brace for casualties that keep coming and never fully arrive in the way anyone expects. In the confusion, the question of when Sneha disappeared loses its sharp edges. Time blurs. Dates flatten. Hours smear into each other like wet ink. Records that might have mattered are suddenly insignificant compared to the scale of disaster unfolding. Security tapes are destroyed when buildings fall. Offices holding files are buried beneath tons of steel and concrete. Witnesses who might have noticed one woman in a crowd are scattered, injured, killed, or simply overwhelmed by their own survival. Physical spaces vanish. Routes disappear. Entire environments are erased from the map in a single morning. Lower Manhattan becomes a disaster zone, sealed off, restricted, altered beyond recognition. The places Sneha might have walked, paused, waited, or passed through no longer exist in the same way. Even the air changes. Ash coats everything, settling into hair, clothes, lungs, and memory. In the days that follow, the city searches for the living and the dead simultaneously. Flyers appear on walls, poles, and subway entrances. Faces stare out from paper, smiling, frozen, hopeful. Sneha's face becomes one of many, though her timeline does not align cleanly with the others. As rescue efforts continue, a theory begins to form quietly, carefully. Sneha was a doctor. She lived nearby. She may have heard the impact, seen the smoke, felt the pull toward the towers. Perhaps she ran toward the disaster rather than away from it. Perhaps she tried to help. The idea settles into place because it needs to. It offers meaning. It offers purpose. It offers a way to explain why someone might vanish into a catastrophe without leaving clear evidence behind. But theories are not proof. No camera captures Sneha at the World Trade Center. No witness places her there with certainty. No hospital records confirm her arrival. No personal belongings are recovered that can be definitively tied to her presence at the site. As remains are recovered and identified over months and years, none are conclusively linked to Sneha Philip. Her absence continues to resist classification. She is not clearly among the dead. Not clearly among the living. She exists in a space disaster has hollowed out, where evidence no longer behaves the way it should. Eventually, her name is added to the official list of September 11th victims. The decision is controversial. Some see it as recognition. Others see it as surrender to uncertainty. The listing closes a door while leaving it visibly unlocked. It acknowledges loss without confirming truth. It accepts a narrative because the alternative is endless suspension. The tragedy of September 11th creates a shadow large enough to cover every unanswered question. Gaps in Sneha's timeline no longer stand out against the background of national trauma. Missing footage feels expected. Missing records feel inevitable. Missing witnesses feel tragically normal. The disaster absorbs her mystery, blurring it into something that cannot be cleanly separated again. Every investigation runs into the same immovable obstacle. The moment where clarity should exist has been obliterated. There is no way to rewind a city collapsing in on itself. There is no way to isolate one disappearance from thousands of deaths and near-deaths unfolding simultaneously. Time once again becomes the antagonist. Not because it passes, but because it fractures. Before September 11th, Sneha is a woman last seen entering her apartment building. After September 11th, she is a question suspended inside catastrophe. The attacks do not answer what happened to her. They make answering impossible. Evidence is not just lost. It is rendered unknowable. The city rebuilds. Memorials rise. Names are read aloud year after year. But Sneha's final hours remain unlit, untouched, unreachable. The tragedy does not resolve her disappearance. It seals it inside history. September 11th did not just kill people. It erased timelines. The investigation does not move forward so much as it moves in circles. Slow circles. Careful ones. The kind that never quite close. With evidence thinned and timelines broken, theories begin to take the place of answers. They are offered gently at first. As possibilities. As ways to sit with the unknown without being consumed by it. The first theory feels almost inevitable. Sneha died in the September 11th attacks while trying to help. She was a doctor. She lived nearby. The towers were close enough that smoke and debris would have been visible from her neighborhood. In the chaos of that morning, it is easy to imagine her moving toward the sound instead of away from it. Easy to imagine her responding instinctively, driven by training, responsibility, or simple human urgency. Many people did. Many ran toward danger believing they could make a difference. The theory offers a shape to the absence. It places Sneha inside a moment that already contains so much loss that one more feels almost expected. But the theory bends under scrutiny. There is no footage of her at the site. No witness who can say they saw her there and knew it was her. No medical records, no volunteer logs, no trace of her presence among the responders. Her remains are never identified. The idea explains where she might have gone. But it cannot explain how she got there, or why no fragment of her journey survived. The second theory moves backward instead of forward. It returns to the night before, to September 10th, to the hours after she left Century 21 and before she entered her building. Somewhere in that stretch of time, something may have happened. Perhaps she met someone. Perhaps it was planned. Perhaps it was spontaneous. A friend, an acquaintance, someone new, someone whose name never appears in any official record. The theory suggests Sneha never made it home at all, despite what the cameras show, or that she did make it home briefly, only to leave again with someone else. But the building cameras never record her exit. Not alone. Not with anyone else. The idea requires a gap in the system, a blind spot wide enough to hide a person completely. Investigators search for it. An unmonitored stairwell. A service exit. A door that should have been locked but wasn't. They find possibilities, but no proof. The theory can explain her missing belongings. Her keys. Her ID. Her shopping bags. But it cannot explain the silence. No witnesses. No sounds. No neighbors reporting voices, arguments, footsteps in the night. The building remains as quiet in memory as it was on the footage. The third theory unsettles people in a different way. Voluntary disappearance. A choice. A decision to step away from her life entirely and begin again somewhere else. Supporters of this idea point to stress, professional difficulties, tension in her marriage, moments of dissatisfaction that might have felt heavier than anyone realized at the time. Sneha was intelligent, capable, resourceful. She could have planned it quietly. She could have left behind the version of herself that felt constrained. The theory suggests intention instead of accident, control instead of chaos. But intention leaves traces, plans leave marks, and Sneha left none. No money withdrawn, no passport activity, no confirmed sightings after that night, no contact with anyone from her past, no evidence of a second identity forming elsewhere. Vanishing completely is harder than it sounds, especially for someone who lived publicly, professionally, visibly. The theory explains why no body is found, but not why no life appears afterward. As investigators speak with friends, co-workers, and family, contradictions emerge quietly. Not lies, not deceptions. Just different versions of the same person remembered through different relationships. Some describe Sneha as struggling. Others remember her as hopeful. Some recall arguments. Others recall plans for the future. No single portrait fully aligns with the next. Each memory adds texture and confusion. Co-workers mention disciplinary issues at work. Family members emphasize resilience and ambition. Friends recall moods that shifted, confidence mixed with restlessness. None of it forms a clear direction. It forms a circle. Again and again, attention returns to the same stretch of missing time. The hours between shopping and entering the building. Minutes that cannot be reconstructed. Movements that cannot be tracked. Conversations that cannot be confirmed or denied. Investigators map the route. They walk it. They imagine it. They test it against known schedules and store hours and transit patterns. Still, nothing clicks into place. The building footage remains unchanged. She enters. She does not exit. There is no body. There is no verified sighting afterward. There is no physical evidence that anchors any theory to reality. Each explanation solves one problem and creates another. Each offers comfort at the cost of certainty. The investigation does not end. It stalls. It hovers. It lingers in the space between facts and imagination. Years pass. Documents are reviewed again. Footage is re-examined. Nothing new emerges. The theories remain, stacked gently beside one another, none strong enough to stand alone. The discomfort grows not from fear but from imbalance. From the sense that something essential is missing and cannot be replaced. The story refuses to settle. It does not choose a path. It does not close a door. Every explanation depends on a moment no one can see. A choice no one can confirm. A movement that left no trace. Every theory requires believing in an unseen moment. Years pass. Quietly. Without ceremony. Time moves forward in the ordinary way, carrying seasons, anniversaries, and changing skylines, while one absence remains exactly where it was left. There are no confirmed sightings of Sneha Philip. No phone calls traced to her voice. No letters. No accidental encounters in distant cities. No moment where someone says they are certain, absolutely certain, that they have seen her again. There are no remains identified as hers. No final physical proof that allows the story to rest. What remains are records, documents, footage, memories held differently by everyone who carries them. Sneha continues to exist on paper and on tape, frozen inside timestamps and still images that do not age the way people do. Legally, her disappearance never resolves cleanly. Emotionally, it never resolves at all. It hangs suspended between explanations, never settling into one shape long enough to feel complete. The case stays open in theory, but closed in practice. Nothing new enters it. Nothing old leaves. Investigators move on. Files are archived. But the unanswered questions remain awake. At the center of it all is the footage. The same few seconds replayed endlessly. Sneha walking into her apartment building, shopping bags in her hands. Her posture relaxed. Her expression neutral. She is unaware she is being recorded in a way that will outlive her. Unaware that this ordinary movement will become the final image people associate with her existence. She does not hesitate. She does not look back. She does not pause as if sensing anything unusual. She simply enters. And the camera keeps watching after she disappears from view. The hallway remains empty. The door never opens again for her. The horror of this story is not found in what happens next. It is found in what does not happen at all. There is no violence caught on tape. No scream. No sudden shift in tone. Only absence. A gap where life should continue. The kind of absence that refuses to resolve into a single explanation. People want endings. They want conclusions that make emotional sense even when facts do not. But some disappearances deny that comfort completely. Sneha's life does not end with certainty. It simply stops being observable. She becomes a presence defined by lack. A silhouette outlined by missing hours and unanswered questions. For her family, time does not heal so much as stretch. Each year adding distance without adding clarity. For the public, interest fades and resurfaces in waves, pulled back by anniversaries and documentaries and retellings that promise understanding but deliver unease instead. The city around her story changes. Buildings rise where others fell. Streets are renamed. Memorials bloom and settle into permanence. But Sneha's final path remains unmapped. Her disappearance resists becoming history. It stays current, unfinished. There is no final chapter. No sentence that can be written with certainty. The records tell us where she was, not where she went. The footage tells us when she entered, not when she left. Memory fills in details selectively, shaped by emotion rather than proof. Everyone who looks at the case carries a different version of Sneha with them. A doctor, a wife, a woman under pressure, a woman capable of starting over, a woman who ran toward danger. Each version feels possible. None feel complete. The longer the case remains unresolved, the more it becomes something else entirely. Not a mystery to be solved, but a reminder of how fragile timelines are. How easily a life can slip between documented moments and never reappear. Some stories end with answers. Others end with lessons. This one ends with silence. With a pause that never resolves into sound again. The building still stands. The door still opens and closes for other residents. The camera still records entrances and exits that make sense. But Sneha's movement through that space remains singular. She enters, and the record stops. No explanation steps forward to claim her. No theory fully holds. The absence remains intact, untouched by certainty. Some disappearances do not end. They simply stop being explained. And somewhere inside that building, inside that frame of footage, a door records entry, and nothing after. Beneath the endless gray sky, something moved in the attic of the Hinterkaifeck farm, though no one was supposed to be there. The farm sat alone, buried deep in the snow-covered hills of Bavaria, Germany, 1922. A blanket of white stretched in every direction, muffling sound and swallowing the distant horizon. The wind whispered through the trees that ringed the farm like silent sentinels. The farmhouse itself was old, built from weathered timber and stone, its roof sagging slightly under years of snow and rain. Smoke rose from the crooked chimney, curling into the gray winter sky. The windows were small and frosted over, but inside, flickering lamplight offered a faint warmth. A low wooden fence outlined the property, half buried in snowdrifts, marking the border between the family's small world and the vast emptiness beyond. The farmyard was quiet, except for the occasional creak of a gate swinging in the wind. Animals huddled in the barn, their breath forming misty clouds in the cold air. The smell of hay and wood smoke mingled, carrying a faint promise of life within the stillness. Inside, the floors were cold but worn smooth from decades of daily footsteps. Every room held the imprint of the family's lives, scuffed tables, chipped chairs, blankets folded neatly on the beds. In the kitchen, a kettle sat on the stove, waiting to be lit for the morning tea. The pantry shelves were stocked modestly, jars of preserved fruit and vegetables lined in order. Each item spoke of care and routine, of survival in a land where winter could be merciless. The Gruber family lived quietly here, shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the land. Andreas Gruber, the father, was a man of few words, his hands calloused from years of labor. He moved steadily through the farm, tending to chores with precision and habit. Kazilia, his wife, kept the house in order, her voice soft but firm as she directed the children's small tasks. Their daughter, Victoria, managed both her own children and the household work, moving with the quiet diligence of someone who had grown up in hardship. The children, unaware of the looming winter's cruelty, played briefly in the snow before returning to chores. A maid worked alongside the family, her presence blending into the rhythm of the farm, her steps careful on the frozen floorboards. Each morning they rose before dawn, lighting lamps and tending animals before the first light touched the snow. The cows needed feeding, the chickens collected from the coop, firewood chopped and stacked to last the day. Water had to be drawn from the frozen well, buckets heavy with ice-cold liquid that would warm slowly in the kitchen. Meals were simple, hearty, designed to sustain the body through labor and bitter winds. And yet, there was comfort in routine, a sense of security in the repetition of daily life. The neighbors were few and distant, living on scattered plots of land down narrow, snow-packed roads. Visits were rare, and communication often consisted of shouted greetings across fields. The isolation was absolute, the world beyond the trees seeming almost like a dream. Villagers occasionally noticed footprints leading through the deep snow toward the farm. Curiously, there were no footprints leading away, as if someone had appeared and vanished into the frozen landscape. Doors sometimes creaked even when no one was inside. Windows, tightly shut, seemed to rattle in the dead of night without cause. The family began to whisper of oddities, though never allowed beyond the hearth. One night, Andreas paused mid-step in the kitchen. He thought he heard soft footfalls overhead. At first, he dismissed it, thinking perhaps the wind shifted the beams or the animals moved in the loft above. But then it happened again, more deliberate this time, measured steps pacing the attic floor. Kazilia frowned, listening carefully from her chair by the stove. "The children must be restless," she suggested, though her voice carried a hint of unease. Victoria shook her head quietly, a shadow crossing her expression. "I heard it too," she admitted in a whisper, "but no one is upstairs." They checked the loft, sweeping lanterns across the wooden beams. Nothing moved except the sway of dust particles in the light. The animals were calm, settled in their stalls, none of the doors or gates had been disturbed. Still, the sound persisted in their minds, echoing in the quiet moments between chores and conversation. Days passed, and the steps were heard again, always when no one seemed to be near. The family spoke of it in hushed tones, attributing it to the wind or perhaps the old boards settling under the weight of snow. Yet unease settled over the farm like frost on the windowsills. Neighbors began to ask why smoke still rose from the chimney when no one appeared to be in the barn. They whispered of the footprints, of the shadows glimpsed from afar, of the cold that seemed unnatural even for winter. The farm seemed to exist in its own time, insulated from the world beyond, yet touched by something inexplicably strange. Inside, the family went about their routines, chopping wood, drawing water, feeding animals, cooking meals, and yet every sound seemed amplified, every creak of timber a warning. And in the night, the attic remained silent yet heavy with presence. The family slept with one ear attuned to the ceiling, hearts quickening at the smallest anomaly. Even the children noticed, waking from dreams with wide eyes, pointing to empty corners. Andreas tried to comfort them. "It's nothing but the house settling." Kazilia hummed quietly, smoothing blankets over little shoulders, but her own hands trembled as she did so. Victoria stayed awake late into the night, staring at the ceiling, listening, counting the moments between the footsteps. She wondered if perhaps they were imagining it, if isolation had played tricks on their minds. But the rhythm of life on Hinterkaifeck could not mask the creeping tension. Each morning they rose again, performed their chores, fed the animals, and lit the fire. And each night the attic waited, patient, silent, and impossibly present. Snow continued to fall, blanketing the fields, muffling sound, and preserving secrets beneath its white surface. And as the wind whistled through the trees, the family went to bed each night, hoping the footsteps were only in their imagination. But deep down, an unshakable sense of being watched had taken root, subtle, insidious, and unrelenting. Strange things began happening on the Hinterkaifeck farm. Keys disappeared. Tools were moved as if invisible hands had passed through the barn. Shadows flickered in corners, vanishing when anyone looked directly. A chair tilted slightly on its own. The family exchanged uneasy glances. They said nothing aloud. But the feeling lingered, pressing against the walls, settling into their bones like a cold draft. One evening, Andreas paused mid-step in the kitchen. Soft creaks echoed from above. Kazilia froze. The children glanced at each other, wide-eyed. "It's probably just the house settling," Andreas muttered, but his voice faltered. Later, the sound returned. Slow, deliberate, footsteps pacing the loft above. Lanterns in hand, Andreas and Victoria climbed the stairs. Dust swirled in the lamplight. The attic was empty. Nothing moved. Nothing at all. The doors were locked, the window tight against the winter wind. The animals were calm, but the house felt heavier. The presence remained, patient, silent. The family debated quietly. "Someone must be here," the maid whispered, her voice trembling. "Impossible," Andreas said, though he didn't believe it entirely. Outside, neighbors began to notice. "They look anxious," one woman said, always glancing over their shoulders, locking doors before leaving. Another shook his head slowly. "Something is wrong there." Footprints appeared in the snow. No one could trace them. They led nowhere. A spade vanished from the shed. Hours later, it was leaning against the barn, slick with snow. Buckets of water were emptied overnight. No one had drawn from the well. The sounds in the attic persisted. Creaking boards. Soft brushing of feet across the rafters. The family whispered in hushed tones, pretending the noises were imagined, sometimes admitting their fear. "I heard someone walking past the bedroom," Victoria said one morning, voice barely audible. "And I checked," Andreas said. "No one was there. Nothing. But the sound was real." Kazilia pressed her hand to her chest, shivering despite the fire. The children huddled near the hearth, afraid to look at the loft above. The snow deepened, muffling the world beyond the farm. The night stretched long and heavy. Candles flickered, shadows dancing on the walls like dark spirits. Even the animals were restless. A cow was found dead in the field one morning. Its eyes stared at the gray sky. No footprints, no sign of struggle, nothing to explain it. The family could not comprehend it. Footprints appeared again, crossing the yard in odd patterns. They stopped abruptly, leading nowhere. Victoria glimpsed a shadow at the edge of the forest one night. It moved slowly, deliberately, and then it vanished. Inside, the air felt colder, heavier, as if carrying a presence that could not be seen. Conversations became cautious. Voices quieter. Eyes constantly scanning dim corners of the rooms. "What if someone is hiding here?" the maid whispered one night. "That's impossible," Andreas said, but even he felt doubt. The floors creaked in deliberate patterns. The attic held a presence. Victoria stayed awake some nights, staring at the ceiling. She imagined shapes moving slowly, waiting. The animals sensed it too. Snorting, shifting in their stalls, uneasy. Neighbors whispered again, noticing the family's growing tension. Some feared spirits, others criminals lurking unseen. Snow fell relentlessly, erasing footprints, muffling sound, isolating the farm completely. A broken gate swung in the wind. A lantern disappeared from the kitchen, only to reappear in the barn. The wick was blackened, as if it had been lit and left. Precautions increased. Locks checked repeatedly. Windows reinforced. Glances into shadows before going to bed. The nights grew darker, heavier. A faint knock echoed through the hall at night. Soft enough to be mistaken for the wind, loud enough to make hearts pound. The dread grew heavier every day. Each step, each glance, each sound seemed dangerous. Andreas felt it pressing on him in the yard. Each swing of the axe echoing in the silence. Casilia felt it carrying through the cold as she drew water. Her hands trembled for reasons she could not name. Victoria felt it as she tucked her children into bed. Listening to the loft above, imagining shapes moving slowly in the dark. Even the maid admitted she felt eyes on her wherever she stood. One evening, a shadow passed across the yard. Elongated by moonlight, moving with purpose. It vanished, leaving only deep footprints in the snow. No one could follow it. No one could see where it had gone. The farm had become a world unto itself. Cut off from reason, from help, from hope. Small, inexplicable events continued daily. Footsteps, shadows, vanished objects, cold drafts that carried unseen weight. The presence settled over the house like a silent, invisible hand. And though they carried on with chores, conversations, and routines, the dread persisted. A terrible sense of waiting filled every room. Every hallway, every stair, every loft above. And each night, the farm seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating something. Night settled slowly over the Hinterkaifeck farm, heavy and unyielding, as if the darkness itself had weight. The cold crept inward, pressing against the walls, slipping through cracks in the timber. Inside, the fire burned low. Orange light flickered across the kitchen walls, stretching shadows until they touched the ceiling. The family gathered close, drawn together by instinct rather than conversation. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, steady and patient. Snow continued to fall. Soft, relentless. The kind of snow that erased sound and memory alike. Andreas stoked the fire once more, the iron poker clinking softly against the stone hearth. Casilia folded her hands in her lap, listening to the quiet. Too quiet. Victoria glanced toward the stairs, her eyes lingering just a moment too long. The children sat near the warmth, drowsy, their breaths slow and even. Above them, the attic rested in darkness. Waiting. A board creaked. Just once. Everyone froze. The sound faded, swallowed by the house. "It's nothing," Andreas said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. The wind answered with a low moan through the trees. The animals shifted in the barn, hooves scraping against wood, chains clinking faintly. Normal sounds. Almost comforting. The family prepared for bed as they always did, lamps dimmed, doors checked, routines followed with deliberate care. Bolts slid into place. Windows secured. Footsteps softened as they moved through the house. Victoria paused at the base of the stairs, listening. Nothing. only the distant crackle of dying embers. They climbed slowly, each step careful, measured as if the house might react to sudden movement. Beds creaked softly as bodies settled beneath heavy blankets. The fire burned lower. Shadows withdrew. Silence returned. For a while, then the sound came again. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not hurried. Above them, the boards whispered under unseen weight. Kazilia opened her eyes, heart pounding. Andreas held his breath. The sound moved, paused, moved again. Closer. Somewhere within the house, a door shifted on its hinges. Just enough to sigh. No one spoke. No one moved. The attic creaked once more, then fell silent. The silence lingered too long. Heavy, pressing. And then something changed. The animals cried out suddenly, sharp and panicked. A cow bellowed. Chains rattled violently. Then silence returned. Deeper this time. Final. The night swallowed the farm whole. Morning did not come quickly. The sky lightened slowly, pale and indifferent. Snow lay undisturbed across the fields. No footprints marked the yard. No smoke rose from the chimney. Hours passed. Then more. Neighbors noticed the stillness. Too still. The animals had not been tended. No one answered shouted greetings. By late afternoon, concern crept in. A neighbor approached the farm cautiously, boots crunching softly through the snow. The door stood unlocked. Inside the air was cold. Too cold. The fire had burned itself out long ago. The smell of iron hung faintly in the air. The first body was found in the barn. Then another. Then another. The family lay where they had fallen, struck down one by one, the violence sudden, brutal, and inexplicably quiet. A pickaxe. Left behind. Blood darkened the hay, frozen stiff by the cold. No signs of struggle echoed through the house. No overturned furniture. No broken doors. The maid was found last. In her room. Still in bed. As if sleep had never ended. The house told a different story. One of routine. Of calm after horror. The animals had been fed. Water drawn. Firewood chopped. Someone had stayed. Milk sat spilled on the kitchen floor, dried into pale streaks. Bread lay half sliced on the table. A lantern rested where it had been used, wick burned low. The fire had been tended after the killings. Kept alive. Warm. For a time. The shock rippled outward through the countryside. Villagers gathered in silence, hats in hand, breath visible in the cold air. No one spoke above a whisper. No one understood. Snow concealed everything. Footprints erased. Time obscured. No cries had been heard. No struggle witnessed. The farm had been swallowed by isolation, sealed away by distance and winter. Police searched the house, the barn, the yard. They found nothing that explained the quiet horror. No sign of escape. No sign of entry. Only the lingering sense that someone had walked those rooms afterward. Unhurried. Unafraid. The fire had warmed them. The animals had eaten from their hands. The house had been lived in. Briefly. Calmly. As if nothing had happened. Neighbors shuddered as they spoke of it later, remembering the silence, the snow, the stillness that pressed in from all sides. Some swore the house felt watched even then, as if the walls remembered, as if the attic still listened. Hinterkaifeck stood empty after that. The snow kept falling. The wind moved through the trees, and the farm returned to silence. But not peace. Never peace. Days passed before the truth of what had happened at Hinterkaifeck fully settled over the countryside. At first, it was only a feeling, a quiet wrongness, the kind that creeps in slowly, noticed only when routine breaks. The animals had not been seen grazing. No smoke curled from the chimney. The farm sat still beneath the snow. Too still. Neighbors spoke of it in passing, wondering aloud why no one had come down the road. Someone suggested illness. Another mentioned the weather. But unease had already taken hold. When they finally went to the farm, they did not go alone. They walked together, hesitant, boots crunching softly through the snow. The yard looked untouched. No fresh tracks. No signs of life. Only the long shadows of afternoon stretching across the frozen ground. The door was not locked. That was the first thing noticed. Inside, the air was stale and cold. And quiet. Painfully quiet. One by one, the truth revealed itself. Not all at once. Slowly, reluctantly. The barn told its story first. Then the house. Then the room at the end of the hall. The realization settled in waves, heavy and disorienting. The family had been dead for days. Days. While the world continued around them. Snow falling. Wind moving through trees. Life elsewhere going on as if nothing had changed. Police arrived from the nearest town, their coats dusted with snow, their expressions grave. They moved carefully, deliberately, as though the farm itself might react to sudden motion. Footprints were found. Only one set, leading toward the farm. None leading away. The snow told no more than that. It had fallen too often, covered too much, erased what answers might have existed. Inside the house, strange details emerged. Unsettling details. The animals had been fed. Water buckets were filled. Firewood was stacked neatly near the hearth. Someone had chopped it. Recently, the fire had been kept alive after the deaths. Not long, but long enough. Milk lay spilled on the kitchen floor, dried into pale, chalky lines. Bread sat on the table, half-eaten. A plate had been used, washed, returned to its place. The house had not been abandoned immediately. Someone had stayed, moved quietly through the rooms, gone about simple tasks, as if the farm were still alive. Police searched every corner, the attic, the barn, the woods nearby. They found nothing. No weapon beyond what lay already known. No signs of forced entry. No clear motive. Only silence and questions. Neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering among themselves. Some crossed themselves. Some refused to look toward the house. Fear spread quietly, slipping into conversations, into dreams, into the spaces between words. Speculation followed. It always does. Some said it was robbery. Others pointed out that nothing of value had been taken. Money was left behind. Tools remained where they were. That explanation faded. Revenge was mentioned next. Old grudges. Disputes over land. Harsh words remembered and replayed. But no one could name a reason strong enough. Family secrets were whispered about, spoken only behind closed doors. Lowered voices. Avoided eye contact. Some believed the answer lay within the walls of the farmhouse itself. That something had grown there, festered, waited. Suspects came and went. Local men questioned. Passing workers mentioned. Travelers remembered too late. No one fit. No one stayed long under scrutiny. Each lead dissolved into uncertainty. Police grew frustrated. Evidence was thin. Time had erased too much. The snow had been too kind to the killer. The village changed after that. People locked doors earlier, looked twice at shadows, listened more closely at night. The sound of footsteps carried farther, or seemed to. Whispers spread about curses, about restless spirits, about the farm being claimed by something unseen. Children were warned not to wander, not to speak of Hinterkaifeck after dark, not to listen when the wind sounded like voices. Some said the house was never empty, that lights were seen long after it was abandoned, that animals avoided the land, that the attic still creaked at night. Whether any of it was true no longer mattered. Fear had taken root, and fear does not need proof. The police eventually left. Files closed, questions unanswered. The farm remained, silent, waiting. The snow fell again, covering tracks, covering memory, leaving behind only the lingering sense that something had happened there. Something that had never truly left. And in the quiet village nearby, people learned to live with not knowing, to sleep with questions, to wake with unease, and to accept that some mysteries do not want to be solved. The mystery did not end with the discovery, or with the last footprints fading beneath fresh snowfall, but instead stretched forward in time, lengthening with every unanswered question and every year that passed without resolution. Hinterkaifeck became less a place and more a silence, a name spoken carefully, as if saying it too loudly might invite something back from the fields and trees that once surrounded the farm. Even now, more than a century later, the case remains officially unsolved, a cold space in history where certainty should have settled but never did. Investigators came and went, generations of police replacing one another, each inheriting the same thin files, the same contradictions, the same unease. Every attempt to impose order on the facts seemed to loosen them further, like snow shaken from a branch only to fall somewhere else. Modern theories multiplied as time passed, shaped by new perspectives, new technologies, and the strange freedom that comes when no living suspect can be offended or arrested. Some believe the killer was someone known to the family, a neighbor or former employee who understood the rhythms of the farm and the habits of those who lived there. Others argue for an outsider, a drifter or itinerant worker who saw opportunity in isolation and vanished before anyone realized something was wrong. There are theories rooted in inheritance disputes, whispered grudges, and long-standing tensions that never made it into official statements but lived on in village memory. A few darker interpretations suggest family secrets so heavy that violence felt inevitable, as if the farm itself were the final pressure point. Then there are those who speak more quietly, who linger on details that logic struggles to contain, who point to the feeding of animals and the chopped wood and fall silent. They ask why someone who committed such an act would remain, performing chores, sleeping under the same roof, breathing the same cold air. They wonder whether the killer felt ownership, guilt, curiosity, or something harder to name. Footprints that appeared and did not leave remain one of the most unsettling elements, a simple fact that refuses to soften with repetition. Snow recorded the approach but erased the departure, leaving behind a visual riddle that still troubles investigators and storytellers alike. Some suggest the tracks were misunderstood, distorted by weather or assumption, while others insist they are exactly what they seem. A person came to the house and stayed. The idea of lingering presence haunts every retelling, not because it is supernatural but because it is so profoundly human and inexplicable. Police records note the lack of clear evidence, the contamination of the scene, the too many hands that touched what should have remained untouched. Neighbors, driven by fear and curiosity, moved through the house before authorities arrived, blurring lines that might once have led somewhere solid. Suspects emerged briefly and faded just as quickly, alibis incomplete, accusations unprovable, lives continuing while answers did not. Each theory feels plausible until it collapses under its own weight, leaving behind only fragments and doubt. As decades passed, fear transformed into folklore, and folklore into cautionary tale, told in lowered voices to children who did not yet understand why adults paused at certain details. The village carried the story like a bruise, no longer painful in the same way but never fully healed. People began to speak of curses not because they truly believed but because curses were easier than randomness. A curse gives shape to terror, while the truth at Hinterkaifeck remains shapeless, drifting, unresolved. The farm itself did not survive long enough to become a shrine or a warning, eventually dismantled, its materials reused, its outline erased from the land. Yet even without walls or a roof, the place persists, marked not by stone but by memory. Snow still falls in that region, quiet and indifferent, covering fields that look like any other fields to those who do not know. At night, the silence is said to feel heavier there, though that may only be the imagination responding to history. Still, imagination has a way of attaching itself to unfinished stories, especially ones that resist closure. Modern investigators revisit the case through documents and reconstructions, hoping distance might reveal what proximity obscured. They find the same problems repeated, the same missing links, the same unsettling calm surrounding the aftermath. Every new analysis circles back to the same details, The same strange normalcy after horror, the same unanswered why. Why stay? Why tend to animals? Why disappear so completely? The legacy of Hinterkaifeck is not just violence but uncertainty, a reminder that some truths do not rise to the surface no matter how long they are left to thaw. It stands as a warning about isolation, about how easily suffering can hide when no one is looking closely enough. It also warns of the stories we tell ourselves when answers do not come, and how those stories can linger as long as the mystery itself. Today there is nothing left to visit, no building to walk through, no creaking stairs or shadowed corners. Only the knowledge that once something happened there that the world never fully understood. The snow falls again and again, covering and uncovering the land, patient and quiet, holding its secrets without effort. And as the story fades into the soft distance of history, one question remains, steady and unyielding, waiting to be asked in the dark. Who walked those floors, and why did they linger?